Well, welcome everybody to the latest round of Humans of DataHub. Today we are joined by Kartik. So Kartik, give us a little introduction, who you are, what you do, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. So excited to be here. I've loved the DataHub community. It's such a rich and vibrant community, and so I'm really glad to be doing this. So my name is Kartik Darapuneni. I work at Included Health, where we're trying to solve a very big problem of including everyone in the healthcare journey. And I specifically work on the data applications team, where I'm leading the team to build better tools and interfaces between data and humans who are trying to leverage data. So what brought me to DataHub and the tools and the community was, I'm part of the data applications team. And so I lead that team today. And one of the core missions of the team is, how do we build tools and interfaces and workflows between data and humans that work at our company? And so when we first started down the data platform creation journey, I'd say this is about 2 years ago, we really built the experience for, how do you author new data sets? How do you get new data into the platform and so forth? And so naturally that kind of evolved into, well, we now have thousands of data sets that people are creating and leveraging. And so we want to continue the reuse of great data. And so how do we kind of surface that information? How do we make data discoverable and searchable? And so that's where, we got to DataHub, and that's kind of what brought me into this community. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. So where are you all in kind of like your DataHub deployment journey? Is it still kind of feeling things out? Have you rolled it out?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there's this huge spectrum of how tools evolve at companies. And so maybe to take a step back and answer a different question, which is how do I think about open source tools, which might
Sure.
be
Yeah.
pertinent to this question. When I look at all the tools that are in the open source community, I kind of think about it in the sense of, oh, here's the building blocks that we have to further our own mission. And so when I think about DataHub, I think about it from the pieces that are available, right? So it's
Sure.
A search platform, the ability to add custom facets really easily and add new entities in a scalable way. And so once we're kind of at that phase where it's well, okay, what are all the core components we need to bring in to make
Sure.
all of the data discoverable? And so we're kind of most of the way through that particular phase. And now what we're thinking about is, what is the user experience for when they land in DataHub, right? So
Sure.
the search bar is not the best experience for everyone.
Sure.
It's probably enough for most companies, but the company I work at is in healthcare, and the data is I would say very nested, very difficult to understand in the breadth of the data that we have. And so we don't want people just searching for random terms, because how do you even find the right term?
Right.
That's often difficult.
Right.
And so we're now past the ingestion phase and now into what is the right UI for our users, and how can we leverage DataHub in a way that we can modify it to fit our needs.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that was.
No, that's awesome. And I love this idea of, we talk about this a lot kind of internally, and I talk to a lot of folks in the community about how, a tool or a platform can only take you so far. You really need to tailor it for your use cases, or tailor it for your stack, or your really the actions that you want people to drive. So I love the idea of DataHub being kind of a building block for you all to then fine tune for your own use cases. That's awesome.
So what has DataHub enabled in your organization? I know you talked a little bit about where you are in deploying DataHub, and what have you seen DataHub make available for you so far?
Yeah, there's there's lots of like individual workflows that it has really enabled for us. Um, one of the big like challenges with data as it starts to sprawl out into different systems that you have, right? So, most companies have like a BI tool of choice. They've got like some way of authoring data, and then you've got the raw data, and then some sort of execution engine, very generically speaking. And so what starts to happen is there is this like cognitive overload that starts to happen where you're like hopping from tool to tool to tool. And to debug like any particular workflow, you're like, oh wait, like, okay, how did this data get produced? Where did this come from? Like what actually happened here? So one of the like first things that has been really useful is the lineage aspect of it, which crosses these like tools, right? And so as an example, we use Looker for dashboarding, and we have an internal like tool that we've built out for authoring and kind of like table creation.
Sure.
And so when people are like, oh, I want to add a new field here, but how will it impact the downstream data sets or like the downstream reporting? That's kind of like what we've enabled today. And so when I think about the impact analysis is like a great example where, you're like, oh, I want to make this change. I want to quickly see all dashboards, but I don't want to like, sit through and like click each of the lineage extensions to find like the final place it's used. So that's one place it's really helped us out. Obviously, like surfacing all of the metadata of like who the owner is, the descriptions and things like that has really been useful. And so we want to take that like one step further and say like, well, what is like good descriptions look like, right?
Sure.
And so like we're still in the process of figuring out a lot of things, but we have the building blocks to kind of get started.
That's awesome. The impact analysis is one of my absolute favorite things.
Yeah.
I love it so much. I'm like so proud of the work that the team did there. It's just so cool.
Love it.
Yeah. So then, so I know that you've been in the community for maybe like 6 months. Is that right?
Time flies.
Who knows? It's some number of months. Yes.
In the month. Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, what do you enjoy about the community? Like, how do you like to engage or kind of collaborate with folks? Like, what keeps bringing you back?
Yeah. I think it's such a like vibrant community because everyone is going through different phases of the data journey at each company, and people bring different perspectives. So some teams are a lot more mature than us when it comes to data, and some teams are, kind of just in the nascent phase of starting to work with data.
Yeah.
And it's this like, it's the thinking behind each team and how they're approaching the problem that I think helps DataHub grow in a more, I want to say like a generic way, so that when we're like, hey, we're not quite there yet, so this isn't as useful, but we know we'll eventually get there.
Sure.
To say like, I can see where you're going and I can see how we get there. So it's this interesting dynamic that you're like, oh, like, yeah, like we can grow in this way. And that's how the best of the teams who use data are thinking about it.
Right.
So it helps us give perspective. The other like part that I love is, when you're standing up a brand new product internally, you just run into the random like bugs that you don't expect to encounter.
Totally.
And then you're like, oh, like, how do I solve this? What do I do?
Yeah.
Right. And so often, if the community wasn't as large, we'd be like, well, we just don't know. Like, we can't invest the time required to go solve this for the next like month or whatever it may take.
Right.
And so we come to the community like, hey, like we're stuck on this problem. What do we do? And someone's like, oh, like just do this thing, set this config. And you're like, oh, that was easy.
Oh,
yeah. Thanks so much. And so it's that like that community aspect that really helps, I think, us trust that like, when we do deploy and we run into problems,
sure,
there's like a path forward where we're not just going to be stuck. There's like other people who have kind of like probably stumbled into it or are looking at the problem.
Sure.
So yeah, I think those are the two things that I really like about the community.
Awesome. I
Yes,
love the
we do have
teamwork.
yeah. Yeah, we have a very, very special collaborative community, which is so great. Yeah, and I'm wondering too, like, what is your favorite DataHub feature or use case that you've come across in the last 6 or so months since you've joined?
Ooh, I'll have to think about this.
Sure.
Because there's so many things I love, but it's like, what's the like most impactful thing, right? So we haven't taken advantage of this, but like it's one of those things that we see the potential and we want to like invest time into it. So it's the work that the team did around surfacing the great expectations, validations, and status of tables, right?
Yes.
And so this is, I'll go back to the building block like analogy where we see this as a building block where we're like, well, yeah, there's some like expectations that are set in the table, but like, could you do like a little bit more with that, like, you know, information? So how do you raise a, I want to say, you know, like a quality score of each data set, right? And then you want to be able to say, okay, now using impact analysis, or it's like the reverse impact analysis, which is for any given dashboard, what's the health and the status of this at any given moment, right? So let's say you're about to go do a reporting to a big customer and you're like, oh, well, like, is my like data up to date? Today, that's like, you know, looking at the data, eyeballing it, trying to see if it's right, and then maybe inspecting some of the underlying data to say, does this look right? But that's kind of silly, right? Like our customers are continuing to grow exponentially. We can't have people like sitting and looking at dashboards for like hours trying to figure out, is this like up to date? So that's one of the features that I'm kind of most excited about leveraging. And then the second one is like actions, which I know it just came out. But I see a lot of potential that's opening up to us by leveraging that functionality. And so I'm really excited to kind of like figure out how that fits into our ecosystem and where we leverage it. And so, yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think on the kind of like quality, like data quality score, this comes up a lot. And I think it's something that I'm personally excited for us to figure out how to tackle it in a building blocks kind of way, right? Where it's like DataHub, the open source platform, doesn't have a strong opinion about what makes for good data, but we allow like configurability of in building that metric for your own use cases, right? And like, what are meaningful measurements? And based off of the tooling you're using or the testing frameworks you're using, you can kind of like choose your own adventure of that. How we do this and how we roll that out, I have no idea, but I can't wait to see the combination of like a quality score and the actions framework. Like the two of those together would just be bonkers. I know. I'm geeking out over here, but I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. And that's excited. That's what I, you know, to go back and answer your question, like what's great about the community as well. It's like, there's this generic framework that's here from actions. And so every company is going to have like slightly different needs. And so what I see is like this plugin based system that someone's going to build for each of these different tools. And now you've like enabled scalability of DataHub. And it's not just like what the DataHub team rolls out. It's like, oh, it's what the, you know, 50 or I think it's like 1,000 plus members in DataHub Slack now, but you know,
3,000.
3,000. Oh, my bad.
I can't even count that high.
Anyway, that's a tangent. I didn't even know the growth rate of that Slack channel is insane.
Yeah, awesome.
But you know, if like a small subset of that community is contributing these plugins with actions and some of the other functionality, then we have like the plug and play of like, oh,
Totally.
we like these 4 things, like let's just bring that in, and now
Mhm.
it's available to us. And so it's a really like scalable ecosystem in that way.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot that you all are actively doing with DataHub. I know that, we talked about like validations, action framework as some exciting things, but I'm curious kind of like for the remainder of 2022, maybe even going into 2023, like what are you excited about seeing within the DataHub community? Like what is success or kind of like meaningful growth look like from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a really interesting and big question.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. I think there's like a lot of places that DataHub can grow into, but I see it as the platform of enablement. And so continued enablement of, more of the core like building blocks that people can leverage. Um, and what I really want is, DataHub to be the one location that everyone goes, well, not everyone, but like everyone who's interested in data goes to kind of take advantage of data and to drive impact at their own individual companies. And so there's one of the things I'm really looking forward to is like the collaborative aspect
Yeah.
of, teams, individuals, and so on. And so what does that really look like? And DataHub and like the community really pioneering like the way that people interact together,
Yeah.
discover the right data for each individual, like each individual problem.
Sure.
And so I'd say that's what I'm most excited about.
Awesome.
I don't know if you had like a different like lens of like technology versus like
No.
people versus Slack, but
Any of it. I think those are all great ways that we could go.
yeah, but I think it's as long as like growth is continuing in terms of the platform, I think it's exciting, right? Like
Totally.
So lots of things to look forward to.
Oh, actually, okay. One last question.
Yeah.
If you met someone on the street or on the internet, I don't know, if you met someone who was joining the DataHub community or starting to like explore DataHub for the first time, like what advice or what what advice would you have for them?
One of the things that's challenging is that data goes through a journey at every company. And so what I would suggest is think about what DataHub enables and think about if it's the right time to invest in the tool. It's not, it's more of a when you bring in a tool like DataHub. It's not is this a good tool or not? Because we need data discovery, you need search, and you need a platform to enable that. And so, like if you're a very small team where you've got a couple, like tens of tables and you're very organized in what you're really surfacing to your team, DataHub may not be the right tool to bring in.
Sure.
But as your company grows and as more people start to think about data and more content is being created, then you really need that platform because it's one of the core building blocks of a data platform.
Sure.
And so I think when you're pitching it to, your team or your executives, really think about where it fits in your data journey and then bring it in. Because if you bring it in at the beginning, everyone's gonna be like, why do we need that? There's only 10 tables.
Right.
So,
that's fantastic advice.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's one of the growing pains that we've had at our own company, right? There's lots of great open source tools out there, but when is the right time to leverage them?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Kartik. It's been great to catch up with you.
Thanks for having me. I love this community, and thank you for building great products and enabling us to leverage this tool and platform. So yeah.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.